All right, so you guys really wanted us to dive into this FTX thing, huh? And when I saw Caroline Ellison, 11 billion forfeiture, I knew this deep dive was going to be juicy.
It's definitely got everyone talking, and it's way bigger than just, like, crypto world drama.
Right, right. But we got to set the stage a bit, back it up. FTX, they were huge. Billions flowing, hanging out with celebrities. They were supposed to be the future of finance, basically.
Yeah, a real powerhouse, at least from the outside. All about cutting-edge tech and, that whole trust us, we're the experts vibe.
And then boom, everything implodes. Investors, someone putting their life savings in, were left high and dry. This wasn't some Silicon Valley bubble pop-in. This was like a financial earthquake. Potentially the biggest fraud case in U.S. history, some say.
Which leads us to those charges against Ellison. Wire fraud, conspiracy. Basically picture this. You're using emails, texts, even DMs to spin this web of lies, all designed to trick people out of their money. That's wire fraud in a nutshell.
In conspiracy. So she wasn't working alone, is that what that means?
Exactly. Conspiracy means a group's involved, each with their part to play in the scheme. The indictment painted a picture of a deliberate effort to mislead investors and, well, use their money for their own benefit.
Okay, got it. So Caroline Ellison, she wasn't just some employee who got caught in the crossfire, right? This was Alameda Research, the hedge fund tangled up with FTX.
And don't forget, she was dating Sam Bankman-Fried, the FTX founder.
Yeah, the plot thickens. So it's not just business gone wrong. You've got intertwined lives, shared ambitions, a romantic relationship, and now this massive scandal hanging over it all.
Talk about a recipe for disaster.
So how does this plea deal fit into this whole mess?
Well, Bankman-Fried, he decided to fight the charges head on. Ellison, she went a different route, took the plea deal, admitted guilt to those conspiracy and fraud charges.
A gamble either way, right?
For sure. But by cooperating with the government, she was basically betting on a lighter sentence, a chance to salvage something from this whole disaster.
And her cooperation was a big deal, right? The sources we looked at used words like extraordinary and even incriminating to describe what she said.
It's kind of amazing, really. Her willingness to be so open, even when it meant incriminating herself, played a key role in Bankman-Fried's conviction.
No kidding. So Bankman-Fried gets 25 years. What about Ellison? What did her gamble get her?
2 years.
2 years. For a multi-billion-dollar fraud case, that doesn't seem like a lot.
Definitely less than a lot of people expected. Even the probation department, they recommended probation, no prison time at all.
So what swayed the judge? Why any prison time if probation was on the table?
Judge Kaplan, she made it clear. Ellison's cooperation was huge, he acknowledged that. But he also couldn't ignore how serious the crime was. He wanted to send a message. This kind of thing has consequences.
A tough balancing act, for sure.
Exactly. Recognizing her help, but also making it clear that actions have consequences, no matter how high up you are or how much money is involved.
Right. 2 years is one thing, but there's also that $11 billion forfeiture order. That's not just a slap on the wrist. That's serious financial punishment.
Absolutely. And just to clarify, forfeiture isn't about Ellison having billions stashed away that they're seizing. It's more about recognizing the huge financial harm done to those investors and trying to use the law to, I don't know, make things a little bit right.
Even if, in this case, it's mostly symbolic.
Right. The odds of actually getting all 11 billion back are slim to none. But the order, it shows the scale of the alleged fraud, and it's a warning to anyone thinking about trying something like this in the future.
Powerful symbol, for sure. But this isn't just about money and legal battles, right? There's a human cost to all of this. Imagine the pressure on Ellison facing the consequences, everyone watching her, having to rebuild a life forever linked to FTX.
It reminds you that even though these white-collar crimes don't always involve physical violence, they still have real victims, real human consequences.
Absolutely. Our sources make it clear she's dealing with the fallout, struggling to find work, dealing with the public eye, even afraid to go out sometimes. Those are the hidden scars of this whole thing.
It's got to be tough. The guilt, the embarrassment, the fear. It's a reminder that our actions have consequences, often way bigger than we realize at the time.
Ellison's story is definitely one for the books, but she's not the only one caught up in this whole FTX mess. What about those other names we keep hearing? Gary Wang, Nishad Singh?
Sure, right. Those guys were tight with Ellison at Alameda, high up, making big decisions, at least according to all the court stuff.
And they took plea deals too, right? Admitted they were part of it. So now everyone's wondering, are their sentences going to look like Ellison's, or are they in for a rougher ride?
Million-dollar question for sure. They cooperated, yeah, but how much they were actually involved, what they actually did, how honest they were being, Judge Kaplan's going to look at all of that.
And he's got to be thinking about the bigger picture too, right? Like, what kind of message does this send to other people?
Absolutely. This whole thing has sparked a debate about, like, what does cooperation even mean in these huge financial crime situations? Is it actually fair? Does it make people more likely to speak up if they know they might get a lighter sentence? Or does it let people who did really bad stuff get away with a slap on the wrist?
Big questions, no easy answers.
Yeah.
That's what makes this case so fascinating. It forces you to think about the legal system, right and wrong, all that.
Exactly. It's not just about what the law says, it's about what message we're sending as a society. Are we serious about punishing corporate crime, especially when it's this big? Or are we basically saying it's okay if you're rich and powerful as long as you cooperate later?
Makes you think.
It does. And as for Wang and Singh, everyone's going to be watching what happens to them. Their sentences will definitely be part of that whole debate about cooperation and justice.
The FTX saga continues. More legal drama to come, I'm sure. And it really makes you think about justice and accountability in this whole digital world.
And beyond the courtroom, there's the human cost, all those people affected by FTX going bankrupt.
Definitely. Before we wrap up our deep dive, it's important to remember what we've learned from this whole story about ambition, lies, and trying to get justice.
It's a classic story, right? But instead of kings and castles, it's tech guys and billions of dollars.
It's crazy how big this FTX fraud was. Billions of dollars just gone.
Yeah.
And so many people lost everything.
It's like they built a fancy house on a foundation of sand with promises of easy money and crypto dreams.
And speaking of broken promises, we can't forget about Caroline Ellison. She was on top of the world, and now she's, well, you know.
Her story is like a warning, right? Power's tempting, ambition can be blinding, and it's easy to talk yourself into doing bad things when you think you'll win in the end.
Definitely a cautionary tale. Makes you think about the cost of success and what lines you're willing to cross to get there. It all comes back to that question of cooperation, doesn't it? Like, how much does it really matter in these situations when the stakes are this high?
Yeah, that's the heart of the issue, isn't it? It's like we want people to come forward, tell the truth. Especially when it comes to these big, complicated schemes, getting people on the inside to talk is how you figure out what really happened.
Right, but it's tricky, right? If cooperating means a lighter sentence, even when you were part of a huge fraud, does that really feel like justice?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question. And there's no easy answer. Every case is different, you know? Lots of factors at play.
Which is what makes this whole FTX thing so interesting and a little scary, to be honest. The line between right and wrong, getting ahead and being reckless, it can get blurry really fast.
Totally. The story's got it all. Money, power, people betraying each other, like something out of a movie, except it's real life. And at the end of the day, it's about the choices people make and how those choices affect everyone else.
And like we've been talking about, those effects, they go way beyond the courtroom.
Oh, absolutely. Reputations get ruined. People lose everything. The emotional toll. It's all part of the story.
It really makes you think. So before we wrap up, I think the big takeaway here is be careful out there. Think for yourself. Don't just take things at face value, especially when it comes to money and investing.
Couldn't agree more. Trust is a fragile thing, and once it's gone, it's tough to get back. The whole FTX mess, it's a good reminder that we all have to demand transparency, you know? Hold people accountable, make sure the system isn't just about making a quick buck, no matter the cost.
Well said. So as we close the book on this deep dive into FTX, Caroline Ellison, all the fallout, here's something to think about. What would you have done differently if you were in Ellison's shoes? Facing those choices, that pressure, what would you have done? It's a question worth asking ourselves, because at the end of the day, we all make choices, and those choices matter. And that's what we're all about here on The Deep Dive. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.